people inherently are imperfect. We miscommunicate, we make mistakes, and so therefore the construction outcome depends on our ability to get these people together, be on the same page, and all do the right thing. So robotics helps because robots don't make mistakes.
And prior to Dusty, you were the co-founder and CTO of Savioke Robotics.
Yes, a cup of coffee. How nice.
My favorite interaction was I was around the corner and a guy opened his door. I could hear the door open and I just heard, "Oh!"
I learned a lot of things at Savioke. I was responsible for building a lot of the technology that underpinned these robots and got them out into the real world. The biggest lesson that I took away from that, we made a big mistake at the beginning of the company where we decided to build the product first before we knew who would buy it. Convincing people to adopt automated layout has been and continues to be probably one of our biggest challenges. I'm convinced that automated layout is inevitable. I know that what we're creating is something that has enduring staying power in the industry.
You've said it has been an uphill battle to get where you are, which is in a very strong position. But was there ever a time when you almost abandoned ship? Tessa Lau, PhD, founder and CEO, Dusty Robotics. Welcome to the Recap Podcast.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Very good to have you. Dusty and its BIM-driven automated construction layout has been recapped in our newsletter multiple times. It's a rare feat, if I may say so, but deserving because you're doing something quite unparalleled. We're going to get to Dusty, but to start, I would love to hear what your first wow moment ever was in anything robotics or machine learning.
So I got into robotics because I was really inspired by this project that was happening at Willow Garage. It was what got me to join Willow and start on a career in robotics. And it was a project called Robots for Humanity. They were helping a quadriplegic who was confined to a wheelchair program robots to do activities of daily living. And that blew my mind. Because before that, I was working in AI and software, and I was doing things that lived behind a screen. And this moment, when I saw that you can actually use robots to do things in the real world for people, that was what got me on my path into robotics.
What an adventure. Do you know how the recruitment went for that individual and how he or she was placed there and what that was like to be chosen for?
Yeah. So his name's Henry Evans, and he actually happened to see a clip on national TV about Willow and robotics, and he was fascinated by what could those robots do to help me? And so he reached out to the team at Willow, and they created a research project around him and around the robots using people from different universities, including Georgia Tech, to actually help him create the tools that he could use to actually live on his own.
So he initiated it.
Yeah. He was a tech executive before he had a accident that unfortunately made him wheelchair bound. Mm-hmm. And so he was looking for ways to make his life better. And he reached out to this robotics company to say, hey, can you help me? And that was how the project started.
Unbelievable. Beautiful, beautiful end result. From a high level, what was Willow Garage and how did you evolve during your time there?
So Willow Garage was the premier research lab for robotics at the time. It was a collection of researchers who were all trying different things in robotics and trying to create the future. The flagship product of Willow was this, what was called a PR2 robot. It was a 4-foot tall, 1,000-pound large robot that was humanoid shaped. It had a base and 2 arms, and it could move around in your house and do things, be programmed to do things. And so it was my first foray into robotics.
Okay.
And I learned so much about this field and what robots could be used for and how we could actually make them do useful things. Mm-hmm. That it was kind of like it was a place where a lot of new ideas spawned out of because of the creativity that was all
Just a
all
massive
there.
sort of experimental grounds.
Yeah.
What years are we talking roughly that it wasn't operating? Because you said was, right? Past tense. I mean,
Yeah.
it was the hub.
It was. I only joined for the last year of its existence.
Got it.
And so that was in 2011 or so.
Okay. And prior to Dusty, you were the co-founder and CTO of Savioke Robotics, where you developed and deployed delivery robots at kind of hospitality, hotels, and high rises. What were some of the moments there that most impacted the early days of Dusty?
The big lesson, I learned a lot of things at Savioke. I was one of the co-founders. I was the CTO. I was responsible for building a lot of the technology that underpinned these robots and got them out into the real world. The biggest lesson that I took away from that was that we made a big mistake at the beginning of the company where we decided to build the product first before we knew who would buy it. And the way we got to that decision was a couple of us just sat down in a conference room and thought, we want to build this robot. Who's going to buy it? And, is it going to be hotels? Is it going to be hospitals? Is it going to be airports? Is it going to be restaurants? And we went through made this whole matrix of all the different possible consumers of a delivery robot. Because we had already decided we were going to build a delivery robot. And when we finally showed it to our first hotel customer, it wasn't what they needed. It was, we discovered that it was a nice to have. But we'd already built it. And we'd already invested so much time and engineering and thought into actually creating this delivery robot platform that we didn't want to start from scratch. And so that one decision, that one mistake, I think kind of unfortunately set the tone for Savioke.
Kind of ties, correct me if I'm wrong, but almost with the old adage, right, of solution looking for a problem.
Exactly.
Kind of a thing.
Yeah. So when we got to Dusty, didn't want to make that same mistake. And so I learned so much about the construction industry before we started building any hardware at all.
Wow. How does co-founding compare to founding a company?
So I was co-founder of both of those companies. At Savioke, Steve Cousins was the CEO. At Dusty, when I struck out to form Dusty, Phil Herget and I decided that we wanted to pair together. Phil was one of the hardware leads at Savioke that kind of invented the way our robots took elevators. So he's a very brilliant technologist. And between the two of us, he's mostly on the software side and I'm more on he's mostly on the hardware side and I'm more on the software side. We figured between the two of us, we have all the skill sets we need to build a robot. And so when we decided to start Dusty, we had to decide who's going to be the CEO and who's going to be the CTO. And I was willing to step up and learn. It means stepping away from the technology, which I'm really comfortable with and I love. But it also means learning a lot of new skill sets. And so I've really enjoyed the journey so far.
Great. So let's talk Dusty, BIM, the works. At its core, Dusty translates BIM data into field layout. Those early days, again, what were some of the hardest UX challenges in bridging digital models and the realities of site crews, and how did you solve them?
One of the first job sites I set foot on, back when I was doing research on construction, this was the month one of Dusty. It was a campus housing project on Stanford campus, and I was talking to the project exec, and he told me there are 1,000 people on my job site every single day, and most days I feel like a kindergarten principal. Because I'm trying to get all of these people to show up for work, do the right thing, and actually perform their job. And it's hard when some of them don't show up sober or they take off early, right? And so his job was basically coordinating, orchestrating the work of all of those people on that construction site. And so as I was thinking about, that was kind of a foundational moment, because as I was thinking about how do we get those people to do the right thing, layout, of course, turns up as one of the critical steps in helping them do the right thing.
Sure.
Because you need to know where to build and what to build, what to build and what to build and where to put it. And so if we can just do that one thing, just show people what to build and where to put it, then we can help that project exec, Rod, do his job a lot easier. And it's a first step towards orchestrating all that work that's happening on that construction site. And so that's what we built. And that's what we're scaling up right now.
Tremendous. You've told a story before about how the idea for Dusty came to be, observing how much went into layout during some renovations to your own home, I think. When you think back to that moment, did you just see it as a problem that needed solving, or did you know in that instant it was a robotic solution?
So my first exposure to construction came during a home remodel, as you referenced. And with my background, I come from the robotics industry. In my world, everything is robotic. My cell phone's built by a robot. My car's built by a robot. So why shouldn't my house be built by a robot too, right? And the fact that it's not was kind of a moment for me where I realized that this industry really needs better solutions. And the solution that we have at Dusty really comes from two insights. One of them is that construction is inherently this collaborative physical task with a bunch of people working together in order to solve problems and accomplish things, combined with the fact that people inherently are imperfect. You know, we miscommunicate, we make mistakes, and so therefore the construction outcome depends on our ability to get these people together, to work together, be on the same page, and all do the right thing. And so robotics helps because robots don't make mistakes. Once they're programmed, you know that they're going to do exactly what they were programmed to do. And so robots help with that mistake part. But robots can also be used to help with the communication part. And that's the beauty of layout, because we're using robots that don't make mistakes to improve human communication and collaboration by getting everyone on the same sheet of music. Think of it as like an orchestra.
Sure.
Where every musician has to be playing in tune off of the same sheet music. And so we're using robots to enable better communication on the job site.
It's stellar because it's, at face value, it could just be, there's a cool robot or there's even a time or money saver. It's a unifying force, really.
Yes.
That's what it seems to be.
Yes.
How many iterations has the Dusty Field printer seen, roughly, since its inception? 2018, we should say, too, founded, right?
Yeah.
Roughly.
Yeah. So if you come to our office, you can visit our museum. We have all of these old robot carcasses sitting on a shelf. And we can walk you through the evolution of Dusty from the early days to now. There were two main, I would say, prototype generations before we got to our first production version. We are now on our second production version. So I would say 4 large generations, but many, many iterations in between those.
To zoom out slightly, what is or was the harder part, building the robot or building the industry trust in the robot?
Phil and I are both roboticists, so we think the building the robot part is easy. The hard part is creating the awareness and demand inside the industry for this product. Because what we're doing is something so new. When we first started, no one had ever seen a working layout robot before. And so they didn't believe that it would work. They had no idea that we could get 10 times the speed, that we can get 1/16 of inch accuracy. They didn't trust that because construction, for good reason, has a lot of healthy skepticism for technology. It has to work. And so until we could actually teach people what this thing is and why they need it, that's the hard part. Building the technology is easy.
What kind of learning curve was there in that element of persuasion? I mean, for you, you're not unfamiliar as a speaker, or you've co-founded multiple companies, but did you find that in the construction domain?
Convincing people to adopt automated layout has been and continues to be probably one of our biggest challenges.
Even today.
One of the ways we've made it faster, we've accelerated the adoption, is that our philosophy has always been that we need to make something that's 10 times better than the way they're doing it today. If you're making something that's like 10% better or it's like 2% better, there's always I don't really need that, right? I can do it the old way and I'm still fine. What we've done with Dusty and with automated layout is shown a workflow that's 10 times better than the way they're doing it today. And because of that, people see it and they think, once I've proven this out, I'm never going back.
Wow. It almost takes us back to, I think, my introductory question, but on the wow moments, you almost have to supply a wow moment.
Yeah.
But it seems to have done that.
Yeah. There was a wow moment on one of our early pilots. This was when we were still testing the technology on job sites. And it was a McCarthy project. It was during COVID. And so everyone had, face masks on, even when we were standing outside, because we didn't all know what was going to happen back then. And so the superintendent, we convinced him to come out and watch the robot as it was moving around and printing. And he stood there watching it for about 30 seconds. He took out his tape measure and verified that we were printing exactly the right spacing and distance.
Healthy skepticism, again,
Yeah,
making sure.
Yeah. And he got up from the floor, put his measuring tape away, and he pulled down his mask, and there was a huge grin on his face. And everyone told me, like, this guy never smiles. He never loves technology. And so you must have blown his mind.
Yep. That's a wow moment for him and the crew, apparently. Yeah. It's a rare sight. You beat me to it. My next question was going to be the most memorable client success story. Sounds like this would be in the running. Anything else comes to mind? It's just something that...
The most memorable story that I have is our first paid job. So in the early days of Dusty, we were still testing the technology. We were trying it out on different job sites. We called them print jobs. So we would do a print job for free, and we would learn, and you would learn what this technology is, what it takes to incorporate it into your workflow, and we would learn what does it need to do to be successful. And so we did that through all of 2019. And the first job we did in 2020 was for this medical office building. It was going to be another free trial. We got the floor plans, the CAD, and we showed up and we started printing. It took us probably a day and a half to print this entire medical office building, about 14,000 square feet. And it was hard. Like our robot barely worked, and we had our entire engineering team on site.
One of those days.
Making it work, and it would reboot itself on its own, and we'd have to wait a while for it to start back up again. And so it was like a really stressful, challenging day for our engineering team. But at the end of the day, at the end of the second day, our sponsor, our host, came to us and said, you guys did a really good job. I spot checked it all, and it's right on. So send us an invoice. And I was like, what's an invoice? I had to Google invoices to figure out like how to create an invoice. Because I didn't know how to charge for our product.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how much to charge. And so I asked him, and he said, oh, well, maybe $5,000. And my eyes got really wide. And I was like, oh my God, okay.
Yep.
And so we still have that first $5,000 check we got from that customer. It's framed in our office.
In the office, okay. Oh, between that and the museum, it's worthy of a trip.
Yeah.
Goodness, what a win. The first half of that story might even answer this next question. I was very curious what Dusty's biggest oh shit moment was.
Oh, this is a fun story.
Great.
So there are two, and I'll tell you one, and I can tell you the other one if you want as well. So one of our early trials was with Swinnerton, and we were allowed to test our robot on one of the sites that they were building in San Francisco, downtown San Francisco. This is right off of Market, which is like the main street going through downtown San Francisco. And they were building a Whole Foods with a bunch of apartments over top of it. And so they were on the ground floor building out that Whole Foods, and they said, hey, you can come demo your robot for us. And so we got the CAD, and we got to the site, we started setting up. And it took us a little while to get started because it was still early and our robot was a lot harder to use back then. But we finally got everything programmed in, and the robot started printing. And as it started printing, this was the first big line. It was going to divide the restrooms in the back of the store from the main part of the store. And so there's a big straight wall. And we thought, oh, this is a piece of cake for our robot. We print straight lines all the time. And so we start printing this line, and you can see the robot kind of veering off course as it goes. And it got worse and worse.
Yep.
And eventually the superintendent started yelling at us, said, shut this thing down, get it off my site. because it was clearly not performing the right thing.
Potentially inebriated, even maybe.
Yes, exactly. And
Sounds like golf balls when I'm at the course. Yeah.
So it was a failure for hardware.
Yeah.
It turned out that the congested environment of downtown San Francisco meant there was a lot of Wi-Fi all around us. If you look up, there are all these apartment buildings. Each window has their own Wi-Fi router broadcasting down into the pit that we were standing in. And so all of that Wi-Fi made it very congested.
Yep.
And we were using Wi-Fi back then to communicate, because why not?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we learned we can't use Wi-Fi.
Valuable lesson. Oh shit! Moment number 2. You got it. You got to share it.
Oh shit! Moment number 2 was also with Swinnerton. They came back.
They could have their own museum too.
They are still a customer, and so they've been really patient with new technology. And so I have to hand it
Clearly.
to them. Oh shit! Moment number 2. We did a head-to-head trial with Swinnerton at the LA Carpenters Union. And I don't tell this story very often, but we were going head-to-head between chalkline layout and one of the automated projection systems. I think it was the Hilti PLT. And so the intent was to show that automated layout like Dusty was so much faster than any of the other systems, especially manual chalkline layout. Unfortunately, the space where they had us, the space where we were all set up to do this experiment had a lot of track hanging from the ceiling, because it was a carpenter's training center, and so they were teaching people how to frame out and install top track. And all of that track created a Faraday cage, which prevented our robot from doing any kind of wireless communication.
Oh boy.
And so our robot wouldn't work in that environment back then. This was really early on, before we've solved a lot of problems that we have. And so, while the chalkline crew was just like merrily going along and snapping their lines, and the PLT crew, took a little while to set up, but then they were just going along and marking their lines. There we were with our laptops, like trying to program the robot. We brought in a second backup system to see if that second backup system would work, but it had the same problem. And it took us a really long time to actually get set up to print. Wow. And finally we got set up to print, and we knocked that out of the park. It took us like a quarter of the time as the other teams, but because we had taken so long to set up, we all finished around the same time.
Wow. Unreal. So even though, you do have a slight excuse, there weren't pure product failures. You had some external circumstances, it seems, in both stories, but still valuable lessons learned. I'm curious about, because you didn't have any construction background. You had the remod at the house.
Right.
The sourcing of these early clients, what was that actual outreach like? Take me day by day, but how did you acquire them?
So for anyone who wants to start a company, I highly recommend Steve Blank's 4 Steps to the Epiphany. That's the Bible for startup founders.
4 Steps of the Epiphany?
The 4 steps, I think it's 4 Steps to the Epiphany.
Okay.
Just search for 4 Steps and Steve Blank, and you'll find it. But that walks you step by step through how do you come up with your idea, how do you test it with people, and how do you actually get started. And so that was the Bible that I was following back then. And the gist of it is there are no answers inside your building, so get outside the building. You don't know what your customers need until you actually talk to them. And so for the first couple months of Dusty, all I was doing was trying to get connected to and talk to as many construction people as I could.
Great. Pavement pounding.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So jumping forward some years, what was the last thing you've changed your mind about in anything Dusty? It could also be robotics or construction too.
Yeah. The most recent thing I've changed my mind about is AI.
Do tell. I sense a hot take.
Yes.
Imminent.
So AI is super interesting. I think it's going to change the world. I think it already is changing the world. But I've always been skeptical about how it can be used with or alongside a robotics product, because the technologies that's out there today, the LLMs, GPTs, they are primarily trained on text corpuses. They're trained off of all of the documents on the internet. And so what they're really good at is generating text and generating what I call static knowledge, What they're not very good at is learning from, capturing, and predicting behavioral knowledge. And what that means is that that spatial temporal aspect is not there in the current wave of LLM technology. And so you can't use it. You can't train a robot off of a text corpus because that robot needs to have a sequence of actions. Imagine baking a cake. You can't, you have to mix the ingredients first before you put it in the oven. You can't put it in the oven before you mix the ingredients, right? You don't get the right cake out. And robots are the same way. They have to be told what to do in what order. And that order is really, really important. Not just that, but the space that they operate in is also really, really important. If I tell my robot to print a line over here, that's very different from printing it over here. So the space, the location of that robot matters a lot. And none of the AI the most common AI technologies out there right now has no concept of space or time. It's trained off of these written documents that are always true. And so my skepticism is, well, you can't use that for training robots or for doing anything with robots. That said, there's a lot of interesting research projects, particularly around VLAs, vision language action models, that are starting to bridge that gap and starting to bring AI into the realm of robots. And so I didn't think it would be relevant, but I'm changing my mind.
So it sounds like, and please pardon the potentially very novice question, but is this delta that exists between, we'll say like the LLMs and the text corpus, I think was your term, and what robots ideally need, is this a purely software problem? Is it some physics problem? I mean, what at the core needs to happen for this to be in real synchronicity?
Yeah. So I got my PhD in AI really, really long time ago.
Yeah.
Before AI is AI.
Sure.
AI right now has a very specific meaning, and back then it had a different meaning. And one of the things that I was studying back in my PhD program was, how do you represent human behavior? What are the concepts, the models that we can use to represent human behavior? And those concepts are missing from the models that we're building today. The models that we're building today, because they started up being trained off of text, don't have that concept of sequential ordering that you see inherent in human behavior. And so it's primarily a software thing, but really it's like a model architecture problem. It's like, how do we design the AI so that it understands the concept of time and sequence and behavior?
Where do you stand on the Turing test? Give us lay folk. I mean, if you studied, it seems to even be a resurrected debate, I guess, because there are some that say the premise as a whole is foolish to begin with, and others that say we've long, I guess, defeated it or passed it. What's your take?
I think to some degree it's irrelevant. Because I think with AI, what we're building are tools. And we're building these tools that are getting smarter every month, every week. And at some point, these tools started interacting with us as if they were human. It's probably happened within the last year or two. When I interact with humans have different levels of cognitive ability. And some are, super smart at spatial reasoning. Some are super smart at verbal wordplay. And what we're seeing in the AIs is that they tend to index on some types of intelligence and less on others, but that as the technology gets better, they're getting better across all of those different dimensions. And so in the early days of AI, there was a program called Eliza. It was like a really simple chatbot, and you would talk to it. It role-played a shrink that you could talk to about, what was bothering you, and it would come back with these canned responses. Does that pass the Turing test? It was programmed to sound like a shrink.
Yeah.
And the things that it said were grammatically correct. They were perfectly reasonable, but they didn't have the context behind it, right? The knowledge about life and society and all of these things that AIs now have. And so I think we actually passed the Turing test a while ago. But my question is, why does it matter? And my answer to that is what we're building, whether they pass the Turing test or not, we are building incrementally smarter tools that help us be better humans and give us superpowers. And regardless of how you categorize them, I think that's pretty darn interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for some people, I think it just helps. I'll just say, in principle, I largely agree with you. I think for some people, it helps cement a potential paranoia in a mimicry that might be occurring with the resemblance between machine and human. And some people are a little irked by that and concerned. But I would agree with you. Also, but back to your variety in human intelligence, it's true. I never felt like I properly heard enough spoken about how discerning is this person. So on the receiving end of this Turing test, the hypothetical Turing test, it matters a lot how discerning that individual is.
Yeah. I mean, I could tell you I'm talking to AI multiple times a day.
Yeah.
And it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's like the capabilities are profoundly different than anything I've ever experienced before.
Well said. Back to wow moments again, but daily. But also, there's almost a stagnation and even a regression in a couple particular use cases for just my own applications and whatnot. It seems certain types of hallucinations seem to be more frequent is one thing. I don't know what that's being worked on, but yeah it's miraculous. Yeah. Certainly.
It's going to change the world.
Your business savvy, I am curious, it will change the world. So regardless of the end game we know pretty much exists, do you think right now it's a bubble?
There's a couple different answers to that. I think AI is here to stay, and it's a fundamental part of our society, and it's not going away. There's no putting the genie back in the bottle. I compare it to electricity. Right now, I don't ask you, are you using electricity? It powers our life. It's all around us. These microphones, these lights, they're all using electricity. You don't talk about it. It's just utility, right? I think AI is the same way. It's like electricity. Eventually, we won't talk about it. It's just taken for granted that, of course, you're using AI. So from that perspective, it's not a bubble. From another perspective, there's so much hype around it that people who don't know it well think it's going to solve all these problems that are kind of difficult to solve with AI, like robotics, for example. And so in that sense, there is somewhat of a bubble effect.
Yeah.
That, people who aren't as, or maybe they're just more creative than us, right, are imagining that AI is different than what it is. There is some of a bubble effect there, I think.
It was a wonderful tangent. I want to come back to Dusty. We stated founded 2018, correct? Did you ever receive bad advice about it?
Yes.
You don't have to name names, but...
All right, I won't name names, but I was told by a very prominent construction tech VC that layout robots are not a good idea.
Not a good idea. Was there a further defense? So I'm just, maybe just rigid and I just like this comfort of maybe a threat of machine. Because I think it seems to be two parts, if I may presume. There's just the comfort and familiarity with how it's always been done. And then I think separately, intimidation might be too dramatic of a term, but just, I don't want that thing on my job site.
Yeah.
Would you agree with?
So we've had to solve a lot of challenges to get to the scale that we are today. And, if you roll back in time, back to 2018, those challenges seem kind of very hard to surmount, right? And so I can totally imagine someone who knows the construction industry better than me. I'm like this naive, newcomer to the industry. Like, I don't know what I don't know. I just know robots. And so, here's my vision and this is what I'm going to do. And it's really easy to say, well, that's never going to work, right? Because I know the industry and there's a lot of barriers you're going to have to adoption. But maybe they underestimated that where there's a will, there's a way. And so we've managed to figure out how to overcome all of those barriers and get as widespread as we have.
Wonderful. A recent recap newsletter highlighted ENR's mention of Dusty. I believe the article was "In Surveying Small Wins Bring Big Gains." For Dusty and its future, what energizes you more, the small or the big? Think of Wozniak versus Jobs. I mean, how do you like to focus?
I get a lot of energy out of the big picture thinking.
Yep.
The small wins, we need them. We need incremental progress. Winning every single customer is a small win for us. Just like step by step, we're going to climb the mountain. And you got to do that by taking one step at a time. It's sort of like there's an analogy about like, how do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time.
Sure.
Right. That's what we're doing. But where I really like to spend my time is thinking about the big picture. Like, where is this going? What is the future of the industry? What's the future of Dusty? And telling that story and combining that with my story and being that thought leader for the industry, that's really exciting to me.
If there are any, what external factors or people might guide that vision and how you flirt with how the future may appear?
I learn a lot from the people around us, from our customers, who I probably don't talk to as often as I should. But I've learned a lot from them. I learn a lot from our investors who've believed in us and who really are in our court as we try to figure out how we're going to solve the problems of the future. And I learn a lot from the industry pioneers. I learn a lot from, Tui at Procore, from Tracy at PlanGrid, right? All the people who have been here before me and shown that there's a successful way through this. And I'm really inspired by their journeys. And I'm trying to figure out how to chart my own journey.
You've said it has been an uphill battle to get where you are, which is in a very strong position. But was there ever a time when you almost abandoned ship?
Never. Not yet, at least. There might still be a time in the future. But I'm convinced that automated layout is inevitable. Whether it's Dusty or someone else, I'm pretty sure it's going to be Dusty. But the reaction that we get from our customers who see what we do on a job site, they've just gotten off of doing a project on their hands and knees, snapping chalk lines, and they witness our robot doing it for the first time, and their eyes light up, and they think, oh my God, this is going to change my life. I know that what we're creating is something that has enduring staying power in the industry, and we will find a way to make it work.
That sounds like a commitment. Excellent. I'd like to pivot off of that to leadership and culture. What CEO duty have you handled perhaps better than you would have thought? And where do you look forward to growing in the coming years as a CEO?
I've had to learn a lot over the years as I've taken on the CEO role. One of the things that I discovered I'm actually pretty good at, even though I didn't realize I would be, was sales. It was never something I'd done before. I'm an engineer by training. Never done anything sales-like. Never had a high school job or anything like, going door to door selling magazines like that. I was always the geek kid, going to the research lab and doing like an internship behind a computer, right? And so sales takes many forms at Dusty. Some of it is selling to customers, and some of it is selling to investors, and pitching the company for fundraising. And I'm discovering that I actually really enjoy it because it's about telling stories, and I love telling stories. And so it has made me appreciate the craft of sales a lot more.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot from all of our sellers on our team, as well as everyone else in the industry who's done this before. And so that's a big surprise to me along this journey.
In terms of skill set, sales is one of one. This arrival at the importance of telling a story, was that something you discovered through just practice? Yeah.
Yeah, I was never a good storyteller before. As an engineer, I get too hung up on what's true
Yeah.
and making sure that my facts are completely accurate before I say anything. And as a storyteller, you kind of have to embellish the facts a little bit to make a better story. And this is something like it's a literal skill that I've had to learn through practice. It does get better with time.
What's a soft skill that you've really honed since founding Dusty?
I think the skill that I use most often in my job is communication. And it's one that I'm constantly learning how to be better at.
And to such an array of parties, right? I mean, in your role.
Yeah. I'm thinking primarily of like communication within our team. As a leader, you are constantly communicating with your team, whether you know it or not. Like people look at what books I have on my desk and they come to judgment, come to some conclusion about it. They look at the whether I'm smiling or frowning when I come out of a meeting, and they ascribe meaning to that. And this is all part of the communication that leaders do with their teams. And so one of the skills that I've developed, and I have a lot more to grow on, is how to be a better communicator.
Wonderful. Is there a company habit or ritual that may not make a whole lot of sense outside it, but works beautifully inside Dusty?
That's an interesting question. One of the things that we started doing in the early days of our robot deployments, our print jobs, was the practice of debriefing after. And we would debrief because things would always go wrong. When you're bringing hardware to the market for the first time, it never works perfectly the first time. And so in order to keep improving that hardware, you need to learn from those mistakes. And in order to learn from those mistakes, you have to actually acknowledge that the mistakes happened, even when they might be someone's fault, right? And so the practice that we instituted was these debrief sessions. We would ask what worked well, what didn't work well, and what can we do better next time? And the intent was to create this objective documentation of reality. Like, what happened? Like, it's not anyone's fault. Like, I know everyone's trying their best. You're not maliciously sabotaging our robot.
Yeah.
But, if we made a mistake, let's acknowledge that, fix it, and move on. And that kind of objective, unbiased way of looking at our performance is something that might not make a lot of sense to people from the outside, but it's something that I really value.
I'd see that being very useful. Would there ever be occasions where there might even be debate about, I don't think that should be classified as, so it becomes interpretive in a sense, but even that I think can engender a healthy dialogue.
Yeah.
And that comes back to communication.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Tess, have you ever consciously slowed down Dusty's growth? And what might you have learned from doing that?
We've never deliberately tried to slow down. We're a venture-backed company. We need to grow at all costs. And
Yeah, we'll come to that too.
Yeah.
Sure.
So growth is like a mandate for us. But I will say that as we've learned from the industry, we have gone through periods where our growth is not as fast as I want it to be. And by listening to our customers and iterating on how we sell to them, that includes the product, the price, the package, we can get to something that better fits the industry. And that allows us to speed up.
The Dusty technology is incredibly novel. Does this shape your hiring process in any way?
We hire from two main sources. We hire from engineering, particularly robotics, and we hire from construction. And as you can imagine, there's not a lot of people in the intersection of those two. We have a couple, and they're amazing. But for the most part, we have to find really good engineers and teach them construction, or we have to find really good salespeople and teach them construction, or, hire really good construction people and teach them sales, or, vice versa. And so it's challenging to be in construction tech just because the pool of people that have already been trained up on the skill sets that you need doesn't really exist.
Yeah. Slim pickings.
So we tend to look for fast learners who can actually pick things up, because if we can't find someone who has all the skills out of the box, we have to teach them something.
What do you most enjoy teaching your team? If you had to pick one thing, and it could be another soft skill, could be communication, but
Resiliency.
Is there always a strong reception to that?
Startups are hard.
Yeah.
It's not a walk in the park. You're not working for like Facebook or Google with infinite dollars. You don't have the massage chair in the afternoons. You don't get the free childcare,
Yep.
right? You have to figure out, you have to be scrappy to figure out how to make this work. We never have enough resources. You can never hire enough people. You're always short-staffed. The deadline's always too soon, and it always takes too long. And so resiliency and grit is the related attribute there, is how do you thrive in that kind of environment? To some degree, we select for that on the way in, but it's an ongoing process to teach our team how to be more resilient.
By this point, have you developed a knack for being able to fairly rapidly recognize when someone is a proud owner of grit and resilience?
There are some tells that correlate, but I wouldn't say we're like 100% at
I
recognizing
think it'd be
this.
damn hard to be 100%. So yeah.
Yeah. But like, for example, if you started your own business when you were in grade school, selling something to your schoolmates, right? That's a pretty good signal.
Yeah.
If you've had to live through adversity, if you had a major health issue, or you had to, or you're an immigrant, right? You had to live through these really challenging times. That's also a really good signal as well.
Briefly touched on it earlier. I'm curious how you would describe the venture capital and funding experience and what memories stand out.
I've learned so much about fundraising through this entire process. I had never done it before Dusty, so this was my first experience with fundraising. And it's a whole game with its own rules, and they don't teach you those rules before you start. You start playing the game, and then you start learning the rules. And no one tells you what the rules are. They just interact with you in a certain way, and you have to figure out what are the rules governing their behavior. There's all these code words that people use. There's these code phrases that mean a certain thing if you know what they're talking about. And I think it's because no one wants to come right out and be direct and talk about what's actually happening. So there's a lot of subtlety involved in playing this game. I love it and I hate it at the same time.
Yeah.
What I love about it is learning and winning at the game. What I hate about it is the rejection, just like any other sales process. People say no, and they're calling my baby ugly, and I don't like that.
Yeah. You would think they would be, this practice of using, euphemisms, as it were, if they're not being direct, that if they are doing something so cutthroat, which is rejection, you would think they could at least, I guess, perhaps be a bit more efficient about it. Very interesting. Is robotics moving too fast, too slow, or exactly on pace for society to absorb it?
I think robotics is moving slower than AI. I think AI is moving too fast for society to absorb it. I think robotics is not.
Do you think that interplay is a sort of zero-sum game? In that, back to the bubble idea, if something were to regress in the AI front, or just a shift of emphasis, maybe, perhaps, that I'm just curious of that coevolution, to what extent it may or may not exist.
I think what's happening with AI is that the reason it's moving too fast for society to absorb is because AI is eliminating entire classes of jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And you might not know it yet, but it's coming for you. And that we as a society, we are not ready for that. Like, we do not have the mechanisms in place like UBI or some kind of a support network to allow the members of our society to thrive in a world where there are no jobs for them. We are not ready for that at all. Right now, you have to have a job to live unless you're one of the privileged few. You need the health care, you need the money to buy your food, to pay your rent, to buy a car, to raise your kids. You can't do that without a job. If you don't have that job, how are you going to do those things? That is a question that we as a society have not answered yet. And AI is already here.
Not to put you on the spot, do you think the government should be first in line to act upon knowledge like that? That it's their responsibility? I won't even ask for the answer, but that all roads come to Uncle Sam.
I don't know who else will solve this problem other than the government.
What else is a contrarian, non-AI opinion you hold?
I don't know. I spend a lot of time thinking about AI. All of the examples I can think of are robots or AI.
It can just be relevant to the times. So it doesn't even necessarily have to be technological.
I mean, related to the government question, I've long been in favor of universal basic income.
Sure.
I think that is the only solution that I've seen that can possibly create a healthy civilization in a world where AI is becoming rampant and it's taking over the work that we formerly thought was done by people. Mm-hmm. And that's a very contrarian statement, although given where I sit and, I'm on the vanguard of robotics and AI,
Yep.
like I'm seeing it happen. I'm causing it to happen in some cases. And so that is the only way forward for us. Unless you want to have mass unemployment and so much human suffering. And no one wants that.
No, not even, multi-billion-dollar executives, right? Because at the end of the day, who is going to fund the yachts if no one has it?
Well, who's going to purchase their products?
Exactly.
Right?
We
need a thriving society. We need consumerism. We need people who can actually buy the products that these robots are making. How are they going to do that?
So you're at the vanguard, AI robotics tech. You're CEO. Again, without naming names, but do you see that the other executives whom you speak to when it comes to UBI are simpatico with that idea? I mean, or is there?
I think it's still a minority opinion.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm bringing it up right now, because I think we need to spend more time talking about this. I don't hear a lot of discussion in my circles about it.
It sure had its moment with Mr. Yang, right? And then it dipped, and then I think it's slowly regaining popularity given these aforementioned strides being made in technology. Wild times. Would you say there's a technology or practice outside robotics that roboticists would benefit from studying?
Business.
What's that interplay?
I gave a talk recently at the ICRA conference, and that's the International Conference on Robotics and Automation. It's a lot of students and practitioners who are who come to learn about like the latest advancements in robotics. And so there's so many humanoid robots, there's so many like motors and vendors trying to sell you parts to go into your robots, and software vendors as well who are trying to sell you software to program your robots. And the thing that I find missing from all of those discussions is, why are you building the robots? What problem does it solve for the world? I think the biggest lack that I see in people studying robotics is, why are they doing it? And in order to understand, in order to create a good business around robotics, or let me say that differently, in order to be able to do something you love in robotics, you have to build things that people want. And so in order to understand what people want, you have to understand what makes business sense. What can make money? How can you sell robots for a profit? What problem are you solving, and for who, and how much are they willing to pay for it? That's what I mean by business. And that's what roboticists really need to learn.
That's very shrewd. Do you think there's this, I don't want to call it a problem, there's just this abundance of tinkerers, right? They kind of, because I should.
Yeah.
And there's not much deeper thought than that.
Yeah. I mean, people get into robotics because it's cool. And I get it. I got into robotics because it's cool.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I got into robotics because I saw this problem that could be solved with robotics. And yeah, the technology is cool and I want to build it. But more than that, I want to have an impact on people's lives. And so cultivating that sense of like, how am I going to change the world through me building this robot? If we have more of that kind of thinking, I think we're going to see a lot more robots in the world.
And all that kind of encompasses all the Savioke lessons in a sense, right? In a sense. If you were to give a 2025 State of Silicon Valley address, what would be your theme?
State of Silicon Valley. That's pretty broad.
State of the Unions can be pretty broad too, but there tends to be a couple motifs, right?
Work with me here. I'm not going to get it perfect on the first try, but
No problem.
if I were to give a State of the Union address for Silicon Valley, it would be something along the lines of, AI is here now and robots are coming soon.
That's a very juicy one. I want to put you on the spot here. When you say soon, 2030, you think that's a fair in pencil deadline?
So I'm seeing a Cambrian explosion of robotic startups right now. A lot of people come to me because, Dusty is one of the more successful robotic startups out there. And so a lot of people want to get my advice on how to start up and how to get started and create a company. And so I see a lot of this. And I think it's a lot easier to build a robot now than it used to be. There's a lot more parts available. There's a lot more technology available. You can cobble something together in a much quicker time frame. And AI is of course the electricity underpinning all of those things. And so there's a lot more flowers that are blooming in this meadow that probably, not all of them are going to work. I wish more of them had more of a business sense, but there are going to be enough that some of them are going to make it. Some might even surpass Dusty. And so I don't know how long it's going to be. AI happened a lot faster than I thought it would, primarily because if you think about the trajectory of OpenAI, like they were around a long time before they really hit the spotlight, before they had something that could actually be useful to people. I think robotics is kind of the same way. It like sleeps for a while. There's a lot of little projects and little innovations that happen here and there. And then eventually someone or maybe a group of companies discover the use case that suddenly unlocks a lot more. And right now we're still in kind of that exploratory phase. We have companies like Dusty that have found a very good use case where robotics is necessary and where it's driving a lot of adoption. And so I think as we explore more and more of these flowers bloom, we will see more and more of that. And eventually robotics is going to be like electricity too.
Yep. So it sounds like you would foresee, OpenAI, it was almost a day. It was almost a watershed moment of a day, I feel like, when that hit. Mm-hmm. You see a similar fate with whatever the use case or industry might be, but something where ubiquitous headlines, right, that it becomes.
I suspect that with robotics, it's going to be a different, it's going to follow a different curve.
Okay.
And that's because the AI agent technology like ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude, that's something that every single person can use. Anyone who has a phone or uses a computer, they can log into these systems, they can interact with it, and they can use it and get the benefits of it. Robots, on the other hand, because they're inherently physical and they have an inherent physical form factor, they are more task specific by nature. I'm personally in team specific morphology as opposed to team humanoid. And so I believe in creating robots that are the best fit for the task at hand rather than trying to build a humanoid that can do that thing. If you can imagine Dusty with a humanoid robot, it would be a humanoid on its hands and knees, snapping chalk lines.
Sure.
I don't think that's the best solution to this problem, right? And so that specific morphology, we had to design that, right? And yes, it's getting faster and faster to design and build those things, but it still takes a while to bring that hardware to market. And so for many of those use cases where robotics are going to be useful, it's going to take a little longer. And it's going to be just for that niche, just for construction or, just for agriculture, or, just for mining. But we will see those things happen. And the longer term thing is humanoid robots. The real question is, when do those become cheap enough and easy to program enough that we actually see them in our homes?
Yeah.
That's when that watershed moment is going to happen. That feels to me a little ways off. I think we're going to see the specific use case robots bloom a lot faster and sooner first.
Obviously, we've covered construction. There's manufacturing, which is well underway. You mentioned mining. Any out of the blue industries that maybe the layperson would not suspect there is a burgeoning presence, if not already immersed, that it's also coming in an industry that not many would suspect?
For robotics?
Yes.
The obvious ones are manufacturing.
Yeah.
E-commerce is an interesting one. We're powering a lot of robotic fulfillment centers and distribution centers. If you think about how your Amazon 2-hour delivery works, that's got to be robots behind the scenes. And so that's an under or a less visible area.
I know only because there have been a couple times it's been recapped in the newsletter, but agriculture. Mm-hmm. And is that something that is?
Big ag is heavily roboticized now, right? All of the big tractors, all of the big, farming machines, they're all internet connected. They're all robotics now. And that has been underway for a while.
Some time ahead of us. I'd like to shift to decision-making and creativity, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
In your career, what time was you most going with your gut?
Founding Dusty.
You just knew it.
Yeah. When you found a company, you don't have enough data. You can't analyze. You have to make gut decisions. You're never going to talk to enough people. You're never going to have enough data points. You're never going to have enough certainty that this decision that you're making is the right decision. You have to go with your gut. Because if you wait until you have that certainty, you've probably missed the boat.
Roughly, because I know it's 7 years. How much time elapsed between that home remod that day and the founding?
I actually founded Dusty when I was in the middle of that home remodel.
Oh my goodness.
Not a good idea. It's hard to pay for construction when you don't have a job. So do not recommend. But it was a learning experience for sure. And so I was like in the thick of construction when I founded Dusty.
You did act fast. Wow, you were walking the walk. Okay. Smallest decision you've made in the past year that had an outsized impact?
Ask me again in 6 months, but I think the answer is going to be hiring one of the execs on my exec team. We've brought on several in the last couple months, and it's amazing to have a really powerful and capable exec team. And those are like these really small incremental decisions about like, who do I hire? Is this the right person for us? And it feels like a small change in the moment, but as they get on board, as they start contributing and their work starts compounding, then what I see is that each of them can have a really big impact on the trajectory of our company.
Bravo. And congratulations. What's a unique constraint you've had to work in that forced a certain creativity?
So I'll go back to the early days of Dusty.
Great.
We had only ordered enough hardware to build 4 robots. And we had all this demand for these 4 robots. And it was COVID. And so we couldn't get any more because supply chains were all messed up.
Yep.
And so we couldn't order any more parts. And everything was shut down. So we had 4 robots.
Parts or toilet paper.
Yeah,
Jeez, yeah.
exactly. Good thing we didn't need toilet paper to build our robots. But, everything was really hard to get. And so so we made do with 4 robots. And it actually forced us into this mode of time sharing those robots between different customers. So what we would do is we said, okay, we can't sell you a robot because we've only got 4 of them, but we can rent you a robot for a short amount of time. And that introduced this new business model of rent a robot, basically. And it forced us to be more creative with how we allocated those robots amongst customers. And we learned a lot through that process. In fact, one of those early customers rented a robot for about a month, super early on. They came out to our lab in Mountain View, which is basically like a garage. And we trained them up on how to use it. And they are still a customer today. And they're starting to scale up across all of their factories to use multiple robots. So so that worked. It was a constraint. Another one that I'll tell you about, another constraint, was our early interactions with the unions.
Okay.
So when we first started deploying Dusty, it was still a little bit hard to use, still required a fair bit of training and know-how to operate our robots. And so we were operating the robots. This was in the Bay Area, which is a union locale. And so eventually the unions got wind of this. And we were about to deploy.
That's when you know you've arrived, by the way.
Yeah, I know, right? We have enough success that the unions start paying attention. Now they're some of our best friends. But so we were about to deploy on this project with DPR, and the head of the sheet metal union got wind of it. And he was standing there saying, I'm not going to allow you to operate this robot on our site because you guys are not union members, and this is a union protected activity that you're doing. And so we said, okay, we will teach you how to do it. And so that forced us, constraints breed creativity, right? That forced us to hand off operation of our unit to someone non-Dusty for the first time ever. The first person we trained was actually the son of the head of the sheet metal union, Brian Masters. And he is still one of our biggest fans today.
Wow.
We were standing next to him every moment he was using the robot, just making sure that he knew everything he needed to know. We taught him how to work around the kinks that we had in the system back then, but he was able to operate it. And that launched us down this path. We knew we would get there eventually. We thought we had a little bit more time to refine the system and make it work better, make it easier to use. But because we had to, we were forced to jump that chasm early, and we haven't looked back.
And that head of the union, then he's on site at this point in time, and he's seeing this, and it just takes off. So it becomes a revelation for Dusty, for them, presumably too. What a moment.
Yeah.
When you're actually stuck on a big problem, unlike that scenario, when you're stuck on a big problem, do you have any sort of go-to to break through?
I think best by writing and talking to people through communication. And so when I get stuck with a problem, what I will usually do is call up another CEO in my network or reach out to one of our advisors in the construction industry and just get their take. They don't always have the answer, but sometimes through conversation, it can unlock the answer. And it's sort of like what I said earlier about there are no facts inside the building.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have these conversations. You have to have this network around you to help you solve these problems. We can only get so far with the thoughts in our own head before we kind of reach a limit.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes someone needs to like kick you in a different direction in order to get you to think about the problem in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Just that shift in perspective.
Yeah.
When you mentioned writing in that, just a different form of communication, or is that a creative thing you like to? You mean like an email even constitutes writing
Yeah, I mean, I write blogs. I blogged most of the early days of Dusty, and many of those were trying to figure out how to solve some of the problems that we had early on.
You've spoken about robotics being a pillar of the fourth industrial revolution. Is that a conviction you've long held, or is it a fairly new belief?
I don't think that we can have industry without robotics. That's a pretty broad statement. It's kind of like, you know, what I said about once people see Dusty and automated layout, they're not going back. Once people experience the benefits of robotics, it's hard to go back. And if you think about what robots are doing for us, I drive a Tesla, right? I have the self-driving module and I don't have to drive anymore. Yeah, I have to sit in the driver's seat and, you know, it's not fully automated like Waymo yet, but it will get there. And that is like so different from what came before. I can't go back. I can't buy any other car now. And so the same is true for any other robotic use case. If you go back to a world in which robots weren't assembling your cell phones, what you're talking about is much more expensive, much less miniature, much less reliable technology. No one wants to go back. Robots are here to stay.
I would certainly agree with you, and I think most would. I am just bloody curious if you had the foresight, let's say at Savioke, that conviction existed then. I'm just curious when it maybe dawned on you. If it was a foray into construction or just even your time at IBM college. I mean, when you were so entrenched in this vision that these were going to be here to stay.
When I was in grad school, I was in the AI lab. We were right next to the robotics lab. I thought they were crazy. I was like, what are you guys doing? Like, that's never going to be useful. That's just like a research prototype. It's like a hobby, like a fun hack. It never felt like robotics back then was ever going to become practical and useful. And so I think it's definitely changed for me over the years. Definitely since I joined Willow and started my own path into the robotics industry. But I think what's also been happening at the same time is the robotization of all of our manufacturing.
Yeah.
Right? It's how we can now get cheap stuff.
That's right.
And no one wants to go back to the old days where artisans were hand making each of our products. That said, I still think there's a space for that. I sew my own clothes. I don't buy robotic produced garments. And so I
You
can
really?
make whatever I want. Yeah, I made this blazer. You can make whatever you want. And so I think there's a space for that kind of handmade custom fabrication. But for the most part, if you
Wow.
want cheap, fast, it's done by a robot.
I got to ask, was that an intentional sort of counterpoint for you, Queen Roboticist, or was it just a passion you've had maybe since childhood, sewing or?
I've always been crafty.
Okay.
My gateway into sewing was knitting, actually, and I got into knitting because I spend my entire day in front of a computer, and I wanted something offline to do that was still creative and productive. And so I knit sweaters, I knit socks, and eventually I got into garment sewing as well.
That's wonderful. So you've stated that Dusty is essentially always co-developing with your customers, right? I'm curious how in the 100% percentage pie, there are only so many hours in the day, studying the 10,000 foot view of progressions in robotics versus Dusty clients, GCs, and talking and refining Dusty. How you balance what you focus on in this sort of contemporary research angle in terms of priority.
Yeah, it's really hard because as CEO, you kind of have to do it all, right? And there's never enough hours in the day to do it all, and so something has to give. We talked about building out our exec team. One of the reasons that I'm super excited about that new exec team that we have is that they free me up more to do that longer term, big picture thinking. And I don't have to be as down in the weeds on the details of signing new deals and bringing new customers on board and growing our business. So ask me again in 6 months and I'll tell you what that balance is.
Duly noted. Have you ever learned something from a tradesperson, a field worker, that altered a product decision?
All the time. We're constantly learning from how people use this in the field.
I know you were informed by them per the conversations we've established you have, but something where, I actually did not think of that, where maybe it's a stronger suggestion or.
Yeah. So our customers have printed more than 3 million words on job sites. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's like, I think, around 30 full-length novels, something like that. And if you think about what they're printing when they're printing those words, I've looked at a lot of them. Some of them is like happy birthday wishes. There's some love letters in there. There's some poetry, right? All the things. It's kind of funny. But in addition to that, there's also a lot of really useful instructions in there.
Yeah.
And so we'll see people print like, rock this side of wall first. And that's clearly an instruction to the framing crew of the sequencing in which they need to perform their actions, right? The inspector is going to come through. He's going to have to look into the wall. So you have to rock this side first to give the inspector space to examine the interior of the wall before you close it all up. If you close it up too soon, or if you do it in the wrong order, then you have to undo it, and that's rework, right? And so that is an example of the behavior that we're trying to orchestrate on job sites. And so that is why we have a vision of Dusty being the intelligent orchestration platform for construction. It's not just about putting lines on the ground. It's not just about telling you where to put the things. It's about telling you how you build this. What do you build? Where do you build it? And when do you build it? Those are the three things. And we're trying to solve all three of those problems.
Mark Andreessen has said that timing is often the most important factor in a startup success. Was it for Dusty?
Timing is always really, really important. You can have the right product idea at the wrong time and not be successful. It's one of the factors. It's not the only factor. but it is a major factor. For us, at the time that we launched Dusty, we were looking at robotics becoming easier to build, easier and cheaper, thanks in part to things like 3D printing, which made it easier to build some experimental parts cheaper and faster. Also, better software stacks, better programming languages, better infrastructure for building systems. And then also in the industry, the tailwinds that we get are the labor shortage, which makes it really hard to find skilled labor to actually do the work. It's the increasing adoption of BIM, where more and more projects are fully coordinated. And so you have that beautiful design in digital space that you want to see in real space. And we have just the general awareness through podcasts like this one that construction needs innovation and construction needs technology. And so all of those factors come together to create the environment where something like Dusty can flourish.
It's been established, clearly. You have quite a moat around Dusty. I'm curious, the pain of mind to imminent competition and upcoming challengers. Mm-hmm. Is that something assigned to the executive team? Is that something you pay no mind to and just focus on Dusty? Because you're pretty exclusive right now. Mm-hmm. Or is it just a non-concern?
I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the competition. What I spend my time thinking about is, what do our customers need and how do we give them that? Because I know that if we can do that, we have a viable business, regardless of who else is out there.
Great. Who comes to mind, if anyone, when you hear the word mentor?
I haven't had a lot of formal mentors in my life, people with an explicit mentor relationship. I have learned a lot from many of the people who have touched my life in one way or another. Particularly our early investors. I'll give a shout out to Avidan from Root Ventures, one of my go-to people when I want to bounce some ideas off of, and he's taught me so much about startupping and fundraising and creating a really good company. So people like that, maybe not in a formal mentor relationship, but have taught me a lot and made me who I am.
Beautiful. If you were a shark on a robotics-themed Shark Tank, what 3 traits would you be looking for?
In a potential startup founder?
That's right.
I would love to be a shark on a Shark Tank someday, because I'm very opinionated about what makes robotics companies successful.
Sure.
I look for founders that are in love with their problem, not in love with their technology. One of the things we did at Dusty when we were deciding whether or not we were going to build this robot was we asked ourselves, do I really need a robot to solve that problem? And if the answer was ever no, we would have not solved this problem. We're solving this problem now because it has to be a robot. There's no other way to do this. But too many roboticists build the robot because they want to build the robot, not because they want to solve the problem. So that's the number one.
That's a winner. I think earlier I lamented some of the fairly newly established shortcomings of AI. Is there anything you are waiting for AI to do a little better?
Stop hallucinating.
Preach.
That's the obvious
That's
one.
a tough one, yeah.
Yeah. So one of my first research projects at IBM Research back early in my career was a software agent that would act on your behalf. And it would automate stuff for you. So it would watch over your shoulder and learn what you were doing on the internet and do it for you. And so I've always been fascinated by this concept of agent and particularly software agents that can do things for you, because for the part of your life that you live online, I hate doing most of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, paying bills and managing travel and all of these things that just require detail and attention and require you to do something online in order to get the outcome you want, which is being here and talking to you, right? I like the being here and talking to you part. I don't so much like the part that leads up to that,
Yep.
right? And so I would love to have agents that can do that. And so that was part of what my research program was at IBM Research back when I was looking at this. And so I'm watching very closely the developments in AI agents. So there's OpenAI's Operator. I think Claude just came out with Comet, I believe. And that area of research and development is really interesting to me, because eventually we're going to have these tools that can do things on our behalf.
Asking for a friend and not myself, of course.
Of course.
Are we going to be done with passwords? And whether it's biometrics, that'd be fine too. Oh my goodness, my Mount Rushmore pet peeves.
I hate passwords.
Because I try to be judicious and do the variety and, be safe, but it just.
Use one of the password managers like 1Password or LastPass. I use the Chrome password manager.
Yeah.
It automatically generates random passwords for you. You don't have to remember them.
I still just. Yes and yes. The real pipe dream, I guess, is biometrics for me personally. Like just the retinal or to just have, yeah.
Yeah.
But.
On the other hand, my iPad never recognizes my fingerprint, so.
Kind of at the time with my fairly old iPhone, even too. That, yeah. Greatest non-robotic invention of the last 50 years.
Greatest non-robotic invention of the last 50 years. That's a long time. Since 1975-ish.
Yep. We can go century if it floats your boat.
Century. My perspective is that a lot of things are really robots, and so it's hard to find a non-robotic invention. Like, I call my dishwasher a robot. Because if you think about it, you put dirty dishes in and clean ones come out.
Well, they're a roboticist.
And it is not a humanoid robot that's standing at my sink and, scrubbing the dishes, but it is scrubbing the dishes. We've just designed it in a certain way. Same thing with my car. My car's a robot. I love it. But I would call that a robot as well. So outside of, I think all technology probably ends up being robotic at some point. And there are a lot of things that make our lives easier that we probably don't appreciate so much. My Nest thermostat is a robot.
Mm-hmm. That it is. A sound definition. Well done. I'll accept the answer. Looking back even as far as your youth, what was always going to become most natural to you? Business, technology, or leadership?
How about all three at the same time?
Simultaneously?
That's
Really?
why I've got the best job in the world.
Wow.
I get to do all three of those things on a daily basis.
But in terms of just a natural inclination, which of the three was the steepest learning curve?
Technology was definitely the easiest because, I got my first computer at a young age. I've been playing with Lego since forever, right?
Yeah.
Building always comes naturally to me.
But that first computer and you were just instantly drawn.
Yeah.
It was...
Yeah. It's like, I love technology. And so that is like second nature for me. Business and leadership are both hard, have been hard for me to learn. The business side of things, because especially as we start growing our business, it's like all of the MBA skills that you need, you got to learn on the job. Because I never went to school for an MBA. And so I'm learning it from my team and learning it by doing it. And part of me wishes, I could just suck all that information in my head and not have to struggle with learning it, but that is the nature of my job. And then leadership is hard because it's not like a book learning thing. You can't read a book on leadership and then be an expert in it. You have to practice it and do it. And you have to try things, and some things work and some things don't. And so it's like a constant trial and error. And I feel really bad when it doesn't work. Like if I say something and that pisses off someone on my team, I feel really bad. And that was a failure in leadership that you can only learn about by doing and making those mistakes and growing. And so I think leadership is probably the hardest to learn because it comes with that, with the higher cost of failure.
Last question, Tessa. And aside from the glorious executive hire, and again, congratulations on that, what are you most excited about for the rest of the year?
Now that I have an exec team, I'm starting to think about what's coming next for Dusty. And we're putting together this really amazing vision of AI powering the intelligent orchestration system for the future. We're starting to build it. And I am super excited to see what comes out of that. AI is much more capable than any of us can imagine. And the rate at which it's advancing is super fast. And so I think when we marry that with the know-how that we have about construction and the foothold that we already have in the industry, we're going to see some really amazing things come out. And I can't wait to see what they are.
Nor can we. Tessa Lau of Dusty Robotics, thank you so much for your company, what you're doing, and for coming on the Recap Podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.